The glass walls of the top-floor corner office reflected the golden haze of sunset, but inside, the temperature had dropped dramatically, not because of the air conditioning, but because of the email Alex Ward had just opened. His jaw clenched, his eyes scanned the lines again, not because he had misunderstood, but because he couldn't quite believe them. "Alexander, I would be honored if you joined us for the celebration of my marriage," the message began, ending with the signature he knew all too well. Victoria Martin. He leaned back in his leather chair, staring blankly at the screen. His assistant, Julian, stood by the door holding a tablet, eyes darting nervously between Alex and the unread stack of files. "You okay, sir?" Alex didn't answer right away. His mind was a whirlwind. 3 years. 3 years since Victoria had walked out of his life, leaving behind a cold silence and 1,000 unanswered questions. And now she was getting married. To someone else. A tech entrepreneur half his age, and she wanted him there. Why? "She wants me at her wedding," Alex said finally, his voice low and unreadable. Julian blinked, unsure how to respond. "Do you want me to decline?" "No," Alex said after a pause. "Accept it." Julian hesitated. "You're really going?" Alex stood, walking slowly toward the wide window that overlooked the city. "If I don't, it looks weak. She'll think she won. The board knows about her. Some of our biggest clients will be there. Walking away isn't an option." Julian nodded. "Then I'll book the flight, hotel, and driver." "There's one more thing," Alex added without turning around. "I'm not going alone." Julian's eyebrows rose. "I want you to find someone," Alex continued. "A professional, elegant, smart, someone who can handle 3 days of pretense. She'll be my fiancée." Julian blinked. "Your what?" "My fake fiancée. I want her to be at my side, smiling like we're in love. Victoria's wedding is going to be the most watched event in this social circle all year. I won't be the pathetic ex sitting alone in the back row." Julian cleared his throat. "You want to hire someone to pretend to be your future wife?" "Yes." There was a long pause. "I know someone who might help," Julian said carefully. "An acquaintance from a casting agency. She knows people who do roles like that for PR events." Alex nodded. "Make the call." Across the city, Lily Hart was crouched in her small apartment, sorting through bills stacked like a paper mountain on the coffee table. The soft hum of the space heater was the only sound in the room. Her watercolor brushes sat untouched in a jar by the window. In front of her lay a hospital invoice, $15,000. The cost of her father's latest treatment, not including the surgery. She rubbed her temples. She had been doing freelance art commissions, children's book illustrations, anything to earn income. But it was never enough. Galleries liked her work, but didn't pay. Publishers took forever to process invoices. Every month felt like a new cliff to climb. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Miss Hart," a calm voice said. "My name is Julian Carter. I represent Mr. Alexander Ward. He has an unusual job offer for you." Lily sat upright. "I'm listening." "It's a temporary engagement," he said. 3 days, you'll attend a private wedding as Mr. Ward's fiancée. All expenses paid. You'll be compensated $15,000. Lily almost laughed. "Wait, what? A fake fiancé? This isn't some kind of escort thing, is it?" "No," Julian replied smoothly. "It's a purely professional arrangement, no physical intimacy required. A contract will be provided. Discretion is essential. You will be briefed on details, backstory, and social expectations." She looked at the invoice again. 15,000. Exactly what she needed. "What's the catch?" she asked. "You'll be in the public eye. The bride is Mr. Ward's ex. There may be scrutiny. You must be comfortable with cameras, conversations, and minor displays of affection in front of guests. Nothing more." Lily leaned back, closing her eyes. Her conscience battled with her survival instinct. This was ridiculous. She was an artist, not a performer, but the weight of debt, and her father's voice, echoing weakly from the hospital, pushed her toward a decision she had never imagined she would make. "I want to see the contract first," she said. "Of course," Julian replied. "We'll arrange a meeting tomorrow. You'll meet Mr. Ward then. He'll approve the arrangement personally." The next day, Lily stood in the grand marble lobby of a skyscraper in downtown Chicago, feeling very out of place in her plain coat and worn leather boots. She clutched her tote bag, containing a sketchbook, a folder of her ID, and a copy of the contract she had just read 3 times over. An elevator dinged. The doors opened to reveal a man in a dark navy suit, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp blue eyes and a clean, calculating expression. His hair was dark brown, almost black, slicked back in perfect style. He was already evaluating her before she stepped in. "You must be Miss Hart," he said, his voice calm but distant. "Lily," she said, stepping into the elevator, "and you must be the desperate billionaire." He blinked, caught off guard. For a moment, something close to amusement flickered in his eyes. "Bold," he said simply. "Do you often speak that way to potential employers?" "Only the ones hiring fake fiancés," she replied, lifting her chin. The elevator doors closed behind them. In the mirrored walls, they stood side by side, he controlled and cold, she composed and quietly defiant. The moment was electric. Neither smiled, but both noticed. And so began a weekend no contract could truly prepare them for. Alex sat across from her at the long glass table in his penthouse meeting room, sunlight pouring in behind him from the floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the Chicago skyline like a painting. He had reviewed her file twice that morning and still wasn't convinced. Lily Hart, 29, freelance illustrator, no criminal record, no scandal online, smart, articulate, and exactly the opposite of the polished socialite he would normally consider for something like this. She had arrived on time, asked thoughtful questions, and didn't flinch once when he laid out the terms of the arrangement. But there was something about her that unsettled him. A quiet strength in her posture, a calm certainty in her gaze, like she wasn't impressed by anything around her, not even him. "You've read the contract," he said, folding his hands in front of him. "Do you have any objections?" She shrugged slightly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear as she kept her eyes on him. "Only one," she said. "The backstory you've written is painfully boring." He raised an eyebrow, more curious than annoyed. "Love at first sight at a charity fundraiser?" She continued. "It's so scripted it practically screams fake. Don't you think someone like Victoria will smell that from across the ballroom?" He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "It needs to be elegant and simple, easy to remember." She shook her head. "Simple is fine, but believable matters more," she said calmly. "What if we say we met by accident, something unexpected, like I spilled coffee on your suit at a bookstore?" His mouth twitched. "My suits cost $5,000, he said. "Then it makes even more sense," she replied. "You wouldn't forget me after that, would you?" There was a brief pause, not awkward, but charged with something else. For the first time since this arrangement began, Alex wasn't entirely in control. "Fine," he said eventually. "We'll adjust the story. I want it clean, easy to retell, and consistent." She nodded once, then reached for her copy of the contract, pulling out a pen. "No problem," she said, signing the bottom with a smooth flourish. "I'll play the part, but don't expect me to smile like a trophy on a shelf. If I'm going to pretend to be your fiancé, I'm going to do it well. That means I speak when I want, and I don't let people walk all over me." Alex studied her face carefully, measuring her words. He could tell she meant it. She wasn't going to be someone he could dress up and parade around. She was going to challenge him, perhaps embarrass him, but also protect his reputation in a way no trained model ever could. "You'll be expected to attend a welcome dinner, a beach party, a pre-wedding cocktail hour, and the ceremony itself," he said, tone shifting back to business. "You'll have a full itinerary, and you'll wear what the stylists prepare." "I dress myself," she interrupted, not rude, just firm. "I'll allow it within reason," he said coolly, "as long as you look like someone I would fall in love with." She tilted her head. "Would you fall in love with someone like me?" The question hung in the air longer than it should have. "I don't fall in love," he answered simply, standing to end the meeting. The car ride to the coast was long and mostly silent. Lily sat in the back seat of the sleek black sedan beside him, watching the trees blur into autumn gold and crimson as they passed. Her fingers moved over a small sketchbook, drawing the way she always did when words felt unnecessary. Alex glanced sideways more than once, curious about the soft pencil lines appearing under her hand. "You draw everything?" he asked suddenly. She looked up, caught off guard. "Only what catches my eye," she said. "The light through the trees today, it reminds me of something from my childhood." He nodded, unsure how to respond, so he said nothing. She didn't press the conversation further. Unlike most people he spent time with, she didn't try to fill the silence with shallow words or try to impress him with stories. She just sat beside him, calm, self-contained, completely uninterested in proving herself. It made him uneasy. It also intrigued him. When they arrived at the beach estate, the staff welcomed them with practiced smiles. The estate was massive, a sprawling villa overlooking the ocean, filled with marble columns, glass staircases, and guests in designer clothes. Victoria's world. A place Alex used to belong to and now couldn't stand. They were shown to their suite, a private wing with 2 rooms, a shared sitting area, and a terrace with a view of the waves. Lily walked in and took everything in with one glance, then tossed her bag on the couch like it was just another day. She didn't fawn over the luxury, didn't snap pictures. She simply existed. That night, at the welcome dinner, they made their first official appearance. He wore a tailored tuxedo. She wore a midnight blue dress that hugged her frame without screaming for attention. She'd chosen it herself, and the moment she walked into the ballroom, every head turned. Not because she was flashy, but because she was real, natural, confident in her own skin. Victoria noticed her instantly. The look on her face was fleeting but sharp, a flicker of annoyance that vanished behind a smile too wide to be genuine. "Alexander," she said smoothly, gliding across the room. "You look, well." "So do you," he replied curtly. "And this must be Lily," Victoria said, turning her attention toward her with a tone that tried to sound warm but rang hollow. "I've heard so little about you." Lily smiled politely. "That's probably because I don't like to be talked about," she said. "But I've heard a lot about you." "Oh?" Victoria's tone cooled just slightly. "Yes," Lily said, meeting her gaze evenly. "Your wedding is beautiful. I hope it turns out just the way you planned." Victoria blinked. There was no venom in Lily's voice, just sincerity wrapped in a velvet glove. Alex, watching silently, felt a strange surge of pride. As the evening continued, they mingled with guests, danced once or twice, and played the roles they had rehearsed. But somewhere between the small talk and the laughter, Alex felt something shift. Lily wasn't just pretending, or maybe she was, but the illusion was so seamless he couldn't tell anymore. She laughed at his dry jokes, teased him gently when he stumbled over a name, and squeezed his hand once when he seemed overwhelmed by the social expectations pressing in around him. In that moment, in front of a crowd that judged every glance and gesture, Lily Hart became more than a contract. She became a presence in his life he hadn't prepared for. Not just beautiful, but grounded, real. And whether he liked it or not, she was beginning to matter. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the coastal estate, bathing everything in a golden glow that felt almost surreal. Alex stood at the balcony of their suite, sipping black coffee, staring out at the endless blue. He heard Lily moving around inside, the soft rustle of fabric, the muted clatter of her sketchbook closing. She was awake early, like him, but unlike him, she seemed unaffected by the stress of the day ahead. Today was the beach party, a casual pre-wedding event, supposedly a relaxed afternoon, but Alex knew better. Every move would be scrutinized, every interaction whispered about. That was how Victoria's world operated, where appearances were the currency and mistakes were lethal. Lily emerged from the bedroom wearing a simple white sundress, the hem fluttering slightly around her knees, her hair tied back in a loose braid. She carried a sun hat and sunglasses, nothing flashy, but somehow she looked more radiant than anyone wearing designer brands could ever hope to. Alex watched her approach without meaning to. There was something magnetic about the way she moved, unhurried, unbothered, as if she carried her own weather inside her. "You ready to survive another day of smiling and pretending?" she asked lightly, sliding the sunglasses into place. "I was born pretending," he said dryly, setting down his coffee cup. She smiled, not mockingly, but warmly, a private smile meant only for him. It disarmed him more effectively than any sharp retort could have. At the beach, everything was staged to perfection. White canopies billowed in the breeze, champagne flowed like water, and tanned, beautiful people laughed too loudly at each other's jokes. Alex kept one hand lightly at Lily's back as they made their rounds, greeting acquaintances, fielding questions. More than once he caught men looking at her, not lecherously, but with genuine admiration. He hated the way it tightened something inside his chest, a primitive and unwelcome jealousy he did not know how to handle. Victoria watched them too, from across the sand, her arm casually draped around her fiancé's. Her smile was too perfect, her eyes too sharp. Alex knew she was planning something, but he could not afford to show any weakness. When they finally sat at a shaded cabana, plates of food before them untouched, Lily leaned closer, speaking softly. "Relax," she said. "You look like you're about to fire everyone here." He exhaled slowly. "I do not enjoy games." She tilted her head. "You're very good at pretending otherwise." He glanced at her, amused despite himself. "So are you." They sat there in silence for a moment, the sounds of laughter and waves filling the spaces between them. Lily pulled out her sketchbook again, sketching quick impressions of the scene around them, her pencil moving with practiced ease. Alex found himself watching her hands, the way her fingers held the pencil lightly yet firmly, the subtle curve of her wrist as she drew. It was calming, soothing even, like watching a musician play a familiar song by heart. "What are you drawing now?" he asked. "Not what," she said, not looking up. "Who?" He leaned closer, curious. On the page, a quick, rough sketch of him appeared, lounging stiffly in his chair, his face caught somewhere between annoyance and exhaustion. "You are making fun of me," he said, but there was no anger in his voice. "Maybe a little," she said, flashing a grin, "but you have a very sketchable face." He huffed a laugh, surprising them both. Later that afternoon, as the guests started to thin out, Victoria made her move. She sauntered over with a glass of wine in hand, her fiancé conveniently distracted by a group of friends. "Well," she said brightly, "you two look cozy." Alex tensed, but Lily only smiled, unbothered. "We're enjoying the party," Lily said. "It's beautiful." Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. "Tell me, Lily, how did you and Alex meet again? Some gala, wasn't it?" Lily blinked once, then tilted her head with a sweet smile. "No," she said calmly. "We met at a bookstore. I spilled coffee on his very expensive suit." Victoria's smile faltered. She had not expected that. "How charming," she said after a beat. "And you, Alex, you forgave her just like that?" Alex smiled thinly. It was the first time anyone had ever dared to ruin one of my suits. I was intrigued. Victoria laughed, a brittle sound, then drifted away, her mind already spinning, calculating. Lily watched her go, then turned to Alex. "She's suspicious," she said under her breath. "She was always good at smelling blood," he replied. They stayed until the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. As they walked back toward the villa, Lily slipped her hand into Alex's without thinking. It was a small gesture, casual, necessary for appearances, but it felt different. His fingers closed around hers automatically, and for a moment, neither of them remembered that it was supposed to be pretend. That night, as Lily got ready for bed in the guest room, she caught her reflection in the mirror. She looked the same, but she felt different. The problem with pretending, she realized, was that sometimes your heart didn't know the difference. Meanwhile, Alex stood at the terrace outside, the ocean breeze ruffling his hair, his mind not on the upcoming wedding, but on the woman who, with a simple touch, had cracked the armor he had spent years building. He should have been worried. He should have reinforced the walls around his heart. But instead, he found himself wondering what it would be like to let them fall completely. The morning of the rehearsal dinner arrived with a clear sky and a crisp breeze, the kind of perfect weather that wedding planners prayed for. Inside the grand villa, the atmosphere was buzzing, waiters setting up canopies and floral arrangements, musicians tuning their instruments, family members moving around in a coordinated chaos that felt oddly staged, as if even their excitement had been rehearsed. Alex stood at the foot of the grand staircase, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt, his mind elsewhere. The tuxedo fit perfectly, every line sharp, every button polished, yet he felt oddly exposed. He glanced up when he heard Lily's footsteps. She descended the staircase in a deep emerald green dress that clung to her in all the right places without a hint of vulgarity. Her hair was pinned up in a loose, elegant twist, a few strands brushing her collarbone. She wore no necklace, no heavy earrings, just a simple pair of pearl studs. She needed no embellishment. Alex found himself unable to look away. "You're staring," she said lightly as she reached him. "You clean up well," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. "So do you," she replied, her smile playful but genuine. For a moment, standing there in the grand hallway, with the light filtering through the stained glass windows and the hum of distant voices, they could have been a real couple, not bound by a contract or desperation, but by something far messier and more real. At the rehearsal dinner, the seating was arranged meticulously, with the bride and groom at the center of the head table, their closest family and friends flanking them. Alex and Lily were placed 2 seats away, close enough to be visible, but not so close that their every word would be overheard. To the watching eyes of the elite, they played their parts flawlessly. Alex's hand brushed the small of Lily's back as he pulled out her chair. Lily leaned in when he spoke, laughing softly at the right moments, touching his arm lightly when the conversation warranted it. They moved together as if choreographed, but it was during the dance that the thin line between pretense and reality blurred completely. Michael, Victoria's brother, pulled Lily onto the dance floor first, spinning her with a grin, complimenting her wit and her good taste in choosing Alex. She laughed, light and musical, and when she finally returned to Alex's arms, she was slightly breathless, cheeks flushed with happiness. Alex placed one hand on her waist, the other holding her hand, and led her into a slow waltz. "You dance well," he murmured, surprised at how easily they moved together. "My grandmother taught me," she said, smiling up at him. "She said dancing is about trust, not steps." Alex's grip tightened slightly on her hand. Trust. It was a word that made his chest ache a little. They danced in silence for a few minutes, the world around them melting away. He noticed how her eyelashes fluttered when she looked down, how the corners of her mouth tilted up when she listened, how the curve of her back fit perfectly against his hand. He was supposed to be pretending, yet every instinct in his body screamed that nothing about this was fake. Later, as they stood by the terrace overlooking the moonlit ocean, Lily leaned against the balustrade, her arms folded loosely, gazing at the water. "This place is beautiful," she said softly. "Too perfect," Alex said, standing close enough that their arms almost brushed. "Like everything else Victoria touches." Lily turned her head slightly, looking at him, really looking. "You were in love with her once," she said, not a question but a simple truth. "I thought I was," he admitted, the confession tasting bitter. But it was more about what she represented: success, acceptance, control. "And me?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "What do I represent?" He was silent for a long moment, the breeze tugging gently at his hair. "Something I can't control," he said finally, his voice low. "Something real." Her breath caught, just for a second. The air between them crackled with a tension that had nothing to do with performance and everything to do with hearts that were starting to wake up from long slumbers. Before either of them could speak again, footsteps approached, breaking the moment. Victoria. She was alone, her fiancé nowhere in sight, holding 2 champagne flutes in her manicured hands. She approached them with a smile, too sharp to be friendly. "I thought I would congratulate you two," she said smoothly, handing a glass to Lily. Lily accepted it with a polite nod, her posture relaxed but alert. "I must admit, Alex, you surprised me," Victoria continued, swirling her own glass. "I never thought you would settle down, especially not with someone so unconventional." The slight emphasis on the last word was not lost on anyone. "I guess you never really knew me," Alex said, his voice calm, but his hand brushed Lily's as if to anchor himself. Victoria's smile tightened. "Maybe not." She sipped her champagne, then added, "Enjoy the evening. After all, weddings are such emotional affairs, aren't they?" With that she glided away, leaving behind a faint scent of expensive perfume and carefully hidden venom. Lily turned to Alex, one eyebrow raised. "She's planning something," Lily said. "I know," Alex replied grimly. "I just don't know what yet." They lingered on the terrace a little longer, pretending to admire the stars, pretending to be a perfect couple in love. But deep inside, both of them knew that the pretending was becoming harder by the minute, not because it was exhausting, but because it was starting to feel frighteningly natural. When they finally went inside, Lily hesitated at the door to her room. She turned to him, her expression unguarded for the first time all evening. "I know what I signed up for," she said, "but just be careful tomorrow." He frowned. "Of what?" "Of forgetting which parts are fake," she said softly, then slipped inside, leaving him standing alone in the hallway, feeling a little more lost than he had any right to be. Alex lay awake long after the villa had gone quiet, staring at the ceiling, the echo of her words rolling through his mind. Be careful. It was too late for that. The problem was not remembering which parts were fake. The problem was realizing that somewhere along the way, he had stopped pretending altogether. The party went on around them, music playing under twinkling lights, champagne flowing, guests dancing and pretending as if nothing had happened. But for Alex and Lily, the world had shifted entirely. They sat quietly at the edge of the garden, away from the crowd, the sounds of laughter distant, like a dream they had stepped out of. Neither spoke for a long time. The adrenaline had faded. What remained was the thudding silence of what came next. Lily broke it first. "You could have denied it," she said softly, not looking at him. "You could have walked away untouched." Alex shook his head slowly. "Maybe before, but not anymore." She glanced at him. "Because of what you said?" He turned toward her, his expression steady, voice low. "Because of what I felt." Lily held his gaze for a second longer, then looked away. Her hands fidgeted in her lap. A part of her wanted to believe him. The other part, the one used to disappointment and survival, whispered caution. That night, she didn't sleep much. She packed her things quietly in the early hours, long before the sun had time to rise. She wrote a note, folded it carefully, and left it on the side table of their shared suite. When Alex woke up, she was gone. The note was short. "You don't owe me anything. What you did yesterday meant more than you know. But this story was never supposed to be permanent, and I can't be something I'm not. Thank you for everything, Alex. Lily." He stared at the handwriting for a long time, the emptiness of the room growing heavier with every breath. A week passed, then two. Back in Chicago, Alex returned to work like a man going through the motions. Meetings, deals, numbers, everything moved as it should. But there was a hollowness to it now, a strange stillness that lingered after the applause, a silence that followed him like a shadow through the high-glass corridors of Sterling Enterprises. He had tried calling. Twice. Once it rang. The second time, it went straight to voicemail. He didn't leave a message. In a small corner of the city, far from downtown, Lily walked through the bookstore where she had first learned to love stories. Her father had been discharged from the hospital. Recovery would be slow, but it was steady. The money from the contract had paid off the debt. The worst was over. But the quiet she had once craved now pressed against her ribs, like something was missing. She painted more now, her sketchbook overflowing with moments she didn't know how to say out loud. A smile that wasn't hers, a hand reaching out in a crowded room, a man standing alone in a suit that never quite fit his heart. She told herself it was better this way. He belonged to a different world, one of headlines and shareholders and billion-dollar deals. She was just a chapter in a story he had already outgrown. But late at night, when the streets went still and the stars blinked above the rooftops, she remembered the way he had looked at her on the dance floor. Not as a role, not as a cover, but as a person. And she couldn't forget it. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon, the bell above the door of the bookstore jingled. Lily looked up from the counter, brushing her hair behind her ear, expecting a customer or a delivery. Instead, she saw him. Alex stood in the doorway, a paper bag in one hand, the other in his pocket. He wore jeans and a navy sweater, no suit, no assistant, no phone glued to his hand. Just him. She stared. He took a step forward. "I figured," he said slowly. "If I kept pretending I didn't miss you, I might start to believe it, but that's not working out." She blinked, unsure whether to laugh or cry. He walked to the counter and placed the paper bag in front of her. "I brought scones," he said, "the kind you like, from that place near your apartment." She opened the bag, blueberry with cinnamon sugar, her favorite. She touched the edge of one, then looked back at him. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "Trying again," he said. But this time for real." He looked around the store, the chipped shelves, the tiny reading nook in the corner, the scattered books with cracked spines. It was imperfect. It was hers, and he loved it. "I want to know you without pretending. No scripts, no contracts, just us," he said, then added, "if you'll let me." She stepped around the counter, slow, uncertain, until she stood in front of him. "What if it doesn't work?" she asked. "It already didn't," he said with a small smile. "And I still came back." She let out a breath that sounded too much like a laugh. "You're really here." He nodded. "I miss the sound of your voice, the way you see the world, even your stubbornness. Especially that." She laughed again, softer this time, and he reached for her hand. "I'm not offering a fairy tale," he said. "Just a chance." She looked down at their joined hands, then up at him, and nodded. They started small, lunches that turned into walks, walks that turned into late-night phone calls, conversations that spilled over into coffee cups and park benches, and lazy afternoons where time didn't seem to matter. He showed her the side of his world that wasn't made of numbers and power. She showed him how to slow down, how to find meaning in simple things, how to see color in places he never noticed. They disagreed sometimes. She hated being followed by reporters. He struggled to not schedule their time together like a business plan. But they learned, they tried, they built something new. Together. Months later, on a quiet Sunday, Alex took her to the rooftop of his building. The skyline stretched behind them like a painting, and the city hummed below. He pulled something from his pocket. It wasn't a ring. It was a small, weathered sketchbook. Hers. She gasped, reaching for it. "I found it," he said. "Left behind at the villa. I've kept it." She flipped it open. Page after page of their time together, moments he hadn't realized she'd captured. His profile at the dinner table, their hands touching under candlelight. The night he had looked at her and said nothing, but she had known everything. "I didn't mean to leave it," she whispered. "I'm glad you did," he said. Then from his other pocket he pulled out a ring, simple, elegant, just like her. "I don't want another fake chapter," he said, his voice low and certain. "I want the rest of the book, with you." Tears welled in her eyes, and she nodded without speaking. Because this time, nothing about it was pretend. The engagement was not announced with a grand party, no press releases, no glitzy magazine spreads. It happened in a quiet circle of family and friends, in a warm restaurant tucked into a cobblestone street where no one cared about last names or bank accounts. Mrs. Ward had needed time, weeks of watching, of cautious conversations, of studying the quiet, steady way Lily moved through Alex's life. In the end, it was not a formal apology she gave, but something better, a simple dinner invitation with no hidden sharpness, no veiled tests. At that dinner, she watched her son laugh in a way he had not done since boyhood. She saw the way he looked at Lily when he thought no one was watching, with a tenderness that no business merger or financial triumph had ever sparked. And when Lily reached for Alex's hand under the table, not for show, but out of simple habit, Mrs. Ward finally smiled and passed the salt. They did not rush into wedding planning. They talked about it sometimes, lazy Sunday mornings when the city outside was still asleep. Sometimes she would tease him about eloping to the mountains. Sometimes he would suggest a beach ceremony where no one wore shoes. But mostly, they built a life. Alex continued to run his company, but the long nights bent over spreadsheets became fewer. He learned to close his laptop at a reasonable hour, to take weekends off, to walk into the cozy little bookstore in Wicker Park carrying coffee and breakfast pastries. The story nook flourished. With Alex's silent backing but Lily's leadership, it became more than a bookstore. It became a community hub. Story time for children on Saturdays, local artists' exhibits on Sundays, poetry readings under string lights that drew crowds from all over the city. It was not the life either of them had planned. It was better. One rainy afternoon, they stood together under the awning of the bookstore, watching puddles form in the cracks of the sidewalk. Lily leaned her head against Alex's shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her without thinking. "This is nice," she said softly. He kissed the top of her head. "It's perfect." They had arguments, of course, about silly things like who forgot to buy milk or who left the heater on too high. About bigger things, too. How much time he spent traveling. How much time she spent lost in her art when he needed her attention. But they always came back, always chose to understand before reacting. Always remembered that what they had almost slipped through their fingers once, and they would not let it happen again. Alex was not the same man he had been before Victoria's wedding. He no longer wore his control like armor. He let himself be vulnerable with Lily, let her see the cracks he used to hide. And Lily, who once thought she would always be the background character in everyone else's story, learned to stand at the center of her own. She learned that love did not mean losing herself. It meant finding someone who cherished every stubborn, imperfect piece of her. One evening, almost a year after the day she had walked away from the villa, they sat in the back room of the bookstore, surrounded by stacks of unshelved books and the smell of ink and old paper. Alex was flipping through a worn copy of The Little Prince, a book Lily had loved since childhood. She was sketching absent-mindedly, the way she always did when her mind wandered. He looked up and caught her smiling at nothing in particular. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. She set her pencil down and crossed the room to sit beside him, curling up against his side. "That, sometimes," she said thoughtfully, "the best stories are the ones you never expected to write." He closed the book and kissed her temple. "And the best chapters," he said, "are the ones you don't plan at all." They sat there until the store grew dark and the streetlights flickered on outside. No photographers, no scandals, no scripts. Just two people, in love, in a life that was messy and imperfect and absolutely real. And in the soft, timeless quiet of that little bookstore, their story continued, page by page, day by day, the way all the best love stories do. Not with a grand ending, but with a beautiful, endless beginning.